Okay, thank you very much. Brian, would you like to ask a question? Go ahead.
Mr. President, welcome. President Trump. I just want to touch upon real quickly the Harvard poll that came out that had, thank you very much, the Harvard poll that came out had you up 9+ points, and all of your agenda that you ran on, you're accomplishing that. You got the support of the American people, including stopping the war in Ukraine. If you can comment on the latest Harvard poll, I'd appreciate that.
Well, I was honored by it. It was a big poll, and it's usually a poll that leans on the other side of things, the other side of the world, so to speak. But the Harvard poll is a respected poll, and it has us not only leading, but leading by a lot, and leading on every single issue that we've talked about. And as I said, we've become the party of common sense, and I think that's a very important element now, common sense, because what's happening in the world and even in this country, some of the things that took place, many of them are now canceled, and the rest are being canceled as we speak. But we've moved very rapidly and I think very effectively. So I was honored by that poll. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Go ahead, please, go ahead.
Mr. President, you said before that you would like to see Russia.
Yes, go ahead.
When you're meeting in Saudi Arabia with President Putin, will that happen regardless of any progress on the Ukrainian file?
Yeah, I think the meeting in Saudi Arabia was a fantastic one. We met with the Crown Prince, who's a fantastic young guy. He's young, but with great imagination and tremendously respected all over the world. And he goes right to the king, and the king is incredible. Gotten to be friends with both of them very much, and they want to see this ended, and they're going all out to make sure that it is ended. I think Russia, likewise, I've spoken to President Putin, and my people are dealing with him constantly, and his people in particular, and they want to do something. I mean, that's what I do. I do deals. My whole life is deals. That's all I know is deals, and I know when somebody wants to make it and when somebody doesn't. I will say this, before I came here, there was no communication with Russia whatsoever, and Russia wasn't answering calls. They were not talking to anybody. They wouldn't talk to anybody, and people sort of accepted that as being that they want to go forward and just keep going without stop. But when I got here, one of the first calls I made was to President Putin, and we were treated with great respect, and they want to end this war. So that's a big thing, because I didn't know if I could say that, but it's a big thing. They want to do it, and the group in the front row that I introduced, they're all very active in it, and we're working on deals right now, transactions right now, and in particular, the big one is to get the war stopped, whether it's ceasefire or direct to an agreement. I'd like to go directly to an agreement, but ceasefire will always happen a little bit quicker. And every day you're saving thousands, or at least hundreds, but thousands in some cases lives. So we want to see if we can get that done very quickly. Yes, for the President, please.
Thank you. I'm a correspondent based in Paris. Question for both of you, actually. Mr. Macron, you were one of the last Western leaders to speak to Putin before Ukraine's invasion. What advice, what recommendation could you make to President Trump to make sure that this time you can get strong enough guarantees, from Putin to get a peace deal that lasts this time? And Mr. President Trump, what makes you think you can trust Putin in those negotiations? Thank you.
Look, I will never give any advice to President Trump. We have friendly and trustful discussion, but my experience with President Putin is the following. Number one, I always think it's good to have discussion with other leaders, and especially when you disagree. I stopped my discussion with President Putin after Bucha and the war crimes, because I considered that, we had nothing to get from him in that time. Now this is a chance, there is a big change, because there is a new US administration. So this is a new context. So there is good reason for President Trump to re-engage with President Putin. But my experience is the following. and I shared it with President Trump and the team. In 2014, our predecessors negotiated peace with President Putin. But because of the lack of guarantees, and especially security guarantees, President Putin violated this peace. And I had several discussions, especially beginning of 2022, several times, 7 hours with President Putin, 15 days before the launching of the attack. He denied everything, but we didn't have security guarantees. So this is why being strong and having deterrence capacities is the only way to be sure it will be respected. And I insisted on that, and this is why I believe that the US has the capacity to do so. And this is why I think we should never say, I will never send any boots on the ground, because you give a blank check to violate any type of commitment. So I think it's good to have discussion. I think it's useful to have negotiation. I think it's super important to go to the peace. But my strong point was to say, let's try to get something first which can be assessed, checked and verified. And let's be sure that we build sufficient guarantees on the short run. And this is where we are ready to be engaged. As for France, a lot of my European colleagues are ready to be engaged. But we do need this American backup, because this is part of the credibility of the security guarantees. And this is our collective deterrence capacity. And I have the feeling that the President has this capacity.
I think it's very much to the benefit of Russia to make a deal. And I feel that we'll do that. It is what it is. Again, it's a war that should have never been started. It's a war that would not have been started if I were president, but it did start, and it's at a terrible level where cities are burned down and shot down to the ground. It looks like demolition sites, a whole big pile of demolition sites, and we got to get it stopped. Too many people, too much agony. The whole culture is destroyed when you rip down some of those really ancient or near ancient buildings. It's so sad to see, but I think it's very much to the benefit of this tremendous distrust on both sides. That's why it's good that I'm coming in now, but I think it's to the very much benefit of Russia to make a deal and to go on with leading Russia in a very positive way. That's what you have to do. But I really believe that he wants to make a deal. Maybe wrong, but I believe he wants to make a deal. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Mr. President, next week there's a key deadline for your Canada and Mexico tariffs.
Pour les droits.
I believe those countries have done enough on the border to stop those from taking effect. And for President Macron, I'm wondering if you believe that this critical minerals deal with Ukraine represents a de facto security guarantee by the United States, since the U.S. would have an interest in protecting those reserves in Ukraine. Thank you.
We're on time with the tariffs, and it seems like that's moving along very rapidly. We've been mistreated very badly by many countries, not just Canada and Mexico. We've been taken advantage of. We were led by, in some cases, fools, because anybody that would sign documents like they signed, where they were able to take advantage of the American people, like has happened over the last long period of time, except for a little 4-year period that took place 4 years ago. But anybody that would agree to allow this to happen to our country should be ashamed of themselves. No, the tariffs are going forward on time, on schedule. This is an abuse that took place for many, many years. And I'm not even blaming the other countries that did this. I blame our leadership for allowing it to happen. I mean, you know, who can blame them if they made these great deals with the United States, took advantage of the United States on manufacturing, on just about everything. Every aspect that you can imagine, they took advantage of. I look at some of these agreements, I'd read them at night, and I'd say, who would ever sign a thing like this? So the tariffs will go forward, yes, and we're going to make up a lot of territory. All we want is reciprocal. We want reciprocity. We want to have the same. So if somebody charges us, we charge them. It's very simple, but it'll be very good for our country. Our country will be extremely liquid and rich again. Plus, we're doing other things, as you know. We're finding tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse at levels that nobody thought possible. You're seeing what's going on. And that was also part of the Harvard poll. Do you agree with what President Trump is doing with Elon and others that are looking for the waste, fraud, and abuse? And the numbers were staggering. It was like 70% to 2%. Everybody wants to find out. They don't like it. And, you know, the radical left or whoever it may be starts screaming about the Constitution, but it has nothing to do with the Constitution. It has to do with fairness to this country. It has to do with being ripped off. And when you read the things that all of these billions, and I mean many billions, hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent on, that's all you have to do is stand up here and read them. I could stand up all day and read the kind of things where we're spending all of this money. The good news is that when you think of how rich a nation we can be when we get rid of this, you know, sometimes you'll buy a company and you'll see it was really well run. They accounted for every penny. Well, not much you can do there. You got yourself a bad deal. This one is the exact opposite. Tremendous fraud, tremendous waste. And when you think of what it is, you know, Elon uses an expression, caring. If we had people that cared, just cared a little bit when they did contracts, when they negotiated with outside vendors on behalf of the United States. That's what I'm doing now. I'm negotiating for the people of the United States. So we're doing a great job of it. I will say we found it'll be hundreds of billions of dollars of waste and fraud and abuse. Thank you, please.
Look, I think this discussion is a very important one. First, because it's important for the US, and it will be a good occasion for a first very important meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky. Second, I think there is a lot of economic upside on both sides. And third, de facto, there is a recognition of Ukrainian sovereignty, a recognition of the Ukrainian interests, and this is de facto a very important alignment of interests. Now, the security guarantees will be negotiated in due time in a full-fledged package of a peace security. But this peace, as it is now written and negotiated, and as this meeting is scheduled, is an important step forward, full-fledged peace agreement.
Okay, please, go ahead. To the President.
Monsieur le Président Trump,
President Trump, President Macron.
to make a deal with Putin. So when you do a deal, it's a win-win deal. What are you giving to him and what is he going to give you, to America? And I was impressed by the way you referred to Notre Dame and that you were impressed by the reconstruction of Notre Dame. A lot of Americans have sent money to Paris to participate to the reconstruction of Notre Dame. As a President of the United States, are you going to contribute to the reconstruction of Ukraine? Et Monsieur le Président Macron?
President Macron, what for you is the main area of progress in your meeting with President Trump? Can you confirm that there is an agreement to send European peacekeeping troops? Will France participate in that? How many troops? What would they be doing? Would this represent a great danger to send French and European troops to Ukraine?
Well, I guess it's a little strange question because you ask whether or not we're going to, on behalf of the United States, contribute to Ukraine. I mean, we're in there for about $350 billion. I think that's a pretty big contribution. I do appreciate the first part of your question, however, because I think they've done an incredible job with the Cathedral of Notre Dame. I think the president has done. I know he headed it up, and I know how hard he worked, and it took a period of time, but really not a long period of time considering what that was, so delicate, so beautiful. And I was there, and I saw the work, and I'm very good at construction. I know good construction. I know bad construction. They did a beautiful job, and this man has to be given a lot of credit for that. It's an incredible cathedral. Most people thought it couldn't be saved, and if it was, it would have to be built in a different form, and we didn't want to see a different form. We wanted to see the same form that you built. So I just want to congratulate you. That was an amazing job. I don't think you've gotten enough credit for it. Someday you will. Someday you will.
Thank you, Donald. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. To go back to your question, today's discussion showed several areas of progress. First, we have been working a great deal with President Zelensky to have a proposal that's acceptable to Ukraine. President Trump has confirmed that he will be meeting with President Zelensky very soon to finalize the agreement on critical minerals and rare earths and to speak together about that matter. That's a very important step forward. The second thing is that during our discussions, we were able to go into some of the details about the proposal that we have just made to have a truce, a peace, and be able to measure that and then structure our discussions on that basis. France and several other European countries, along with Ukraine, are hard at work to build this lasting peace with very specific points, including security guarantees, the territories that belong to Ukraine, the issue of reconstruction, the economy, and critical minerals. We've been able to go into the details of those proposals. The third area of progress, which really mark a turning point, is the fact that we were able to talk about the details of the security guarantees. And the president has shown this over the past few days, and he said so a moment ago. We want peace. He wants peace. We want peace swiftly, but we don't want an agreement that is weak. The fact that there are Europeans that are ready to engage to provide for these security guarantees. And now there's a clear American message that the U.S., as an ally, is ready to provide that solidarity for that approach. That's a turning point, in my view. And that is one of the great areas of progress that we've made during this trip and during this discussion. When it comes to troops, in the past, a year ago specifically, we saw a reason to talk about sending troops for strategic regions. Today, when we talk about troops, we're talking about sending them in after we've negotiated a lasting peace. And once we have that solid, lasting peace, that's part of an agreement signed by Ukraine, signed by Russia, and for which we will provide the guarantees, then at that point, and recently France has worked with the UK to provide its contributions. We've worked on plans, we've worked with our militaries, not to go to the front lines, not to go into occupied territories, but as a show of support to show that we have a negotiated peace signed by both sides, and that is a peace we will preserve. So these would be peaceful deployments of troops, not for combat. These would be deployments of an assurance force. They would be limited, but they show solidarity. I've also spoken with all of our allies, and there are European and non-European allies who are ready and willing to take part in that effort. Countries have helped Ukraine maintain its military capabilities in terms of the number of soldiers it has, equipment, whereas others have provided logistical support on the ground. The question is whether or in what form the U.S. will contribute, and during our discussions, and during the discussions with Russia, we've understood that this would be acceptable to Russia, and that's a very important area of progress. And that means that in this context, the Europeans will shoulder their part of the burden, their share of the burden. We have a strong alliance that we've built over the decades. We have our solidarity, and we have deterrence capacities. What does it mean? Would it be dangerous? If there is an agreement signed by Ukraine and Russia, thanks to the efforts of President Trump, and if we provide the guarantees and Russia violates the agreement, then it would be in conflict with everyone who is engaged in the peace process. And that is a change. That was something we did not see in the past. That's not what we saw in 2014. So that is the real change that we're marking. We have this deterrence capacity on the American side. We have the capacity for engagement on the European side, and that's something we're going to continue working on together. It's not dangerous, but it's credible. it's less dangerous than things that could happen in the long term. And I think this is what we need to do to ensure security. And I say this very clearly. We're also talking about security for Europeans. I've been saying this for weeks now. If we do not guarantee the security of this territory within Europe, then how can we guarantee our own security for one and all? We live just 1,500 kilometers from Ukraine, and the Germans and Polish are even closer. So our collective security is important. We need to answer this call for Europeans to be more engaged, and Americans will be there still in solidarity. Europeans are working for their collective security, but I really think this was a turning point today in our discussions.
Emmanuel, thank you very much. Great job, and it's been wonderful being with you. Say hello to your beautiful wife, and we will see you again soon. We'll be speaking often. We'll get this thing worked out. We're going to get it done. So important, and great job.
Thank you.